This episode contains material that might be triggering for some. If you need to stop the podcast at any time to take care of yourself, please do so.
If you need support, you can call the 24/7 National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
It's Kate and Michelle. We're back.
I forgot I existed for a second.
I know. That's why I was like, it's both of us.
It's both of us.
I don't know if you were going to say hi.
I'm here too.
You're always much better at saying hi, though, on time than I am.
Normally. I know. It's just I got lost for a moment because I thought I saw my little, on my recording software. I thought I saw it making like it was getting noises when you were talking. I was like, oh shit, do I have you turned up too high? So then I lost track of the fact that I was going to say something.
Anyways, we're here. We're ready.
Sort of.
I think we're ready. So introducing this episode for today. We've been building up to this, I feel like, in some ways, because we were talking about making friends, and then talking about boundary setting, which is typically a thing that has to happen at some point in time with most, if not all, of our relationships after we establish them. And now we're working up to this icing on the cake, which is how to end relationships if and when that is needed.
I was going to say, I don't think most people think ending relationships is icing.
That's actually a good point. Icing on the cake normally means something positive. I don't know. End of the road, final stop on your journey. Something that maybe doesn't have positive connotations, because this is really hard to end relationships. And a lot of times people can maybe think of this in particular with romantic relationships and going through a breakup or a divorce or something like that. But really what we're going to be talking about today applies to a variety of different kinds of relationships. We have times in our lives where we maybe need to end relationships with friends or with family members, or with, I'm trying to think of other different types of relationships because those encompass a lot of it, but coworkers.
I was gonna say like
colleagues.
ending. You might leave a job, but to end a relationship with like an abusive boss or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And when the emphasis is more on the relationship you're getting out of than the job you're getting out of.
Yeah, like you're leaving because of this relationship within that context, kind of a thing. Yeah, totally. So we're gonna walk through some principles that DBT recommends today for how to end relationships, and different skills that we've already talked about that can be really helpful in taking that step, because it is super hard to do.
It is super hard to do.
Yeah, so that's what we're getting into today.
All right. Are we going? Are we ready? Are we going?
Yes, get into it, Kate. Take it away.
All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is basically two different, I would say, types of relationship where you would want to end them. So the way that this handout in DBT works is it lists destructive relationships and interfering relationships as these two different categories of types of relationship that you might want to end. Now, I will also, before I start describing them, say that both of these represent kind of, I don't know, a further end of a scale. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't want people to think that they have to have relationships that are this bad in order to end them. Right? Like there's a number of reasons that you might want to end a relationship, and, depending on how important that relationship was or was not, it might not have to have that high of a bar for you to choose to end it, right? So the two things we're going to describe, or I'm going to describe right now, are pretty severe. And I think if your relationship falls into one of these categories, you probably have a pretty damn good reason for ending it. But that isn't to say that things have to be this bad for you to have a good reason to end it. There we go. I can talk. So that's sort of my preface there. So the first one that it talks about is destructive relationships. It says that these have the quality of destroying or completely spoiling either the quality of the relationship or aspects of yourself. Things such as your physical body and safety, your self-esteem or sense of integrity, your happiness or peace of mind, or your caring for that other person. I would say that if you're in this type of relationship, you probably already know, right? This is going to be stuff that is pretty obvious to you, might also be obvious to those around you in your life, right? This is probably a relationship that you might find people that love you have been urging you to end, right? People have expressed concern about you because of this relationship, right? If a relationship is this sort of overtly destructive, I guess I'm going to say, I don't know what you know when you see it, right? If I'm talking right now and I just listed this and you're like, oh, yeah, right? Like, you're probably not wondering, right? You're probably, if your relationship falls into this category, you're probably not sitting back going, I wonder if this relationship is a bad one. Not to say that there aren't plenty of reasons that people end up staying in relationships that are this bad. So not to try and invalidate the fact that they're still very scary to exit, sometimes scarier to exit, depending on how destructive the relationship is. There's also, trying to keep a family together. There are, financial insecurity reasons there, right? There's all sorts of reasons. So this is not in any way, shape, or form to invalidate or to shame someone who is in this kind of relationship and is obviously staying, at least in this moment in this relationship. It's just to say, you probably know, right? This is something you probably feel pretty well in your gut about your relationship if you're there. The other type of relationship that they talk about is an interfering one. They describe that as a relationship that blocks or makes difficult your pursuing goals that are important to you. Things like your ability to enjoy life and do things you like doing, your relationships with other people in your life, or the welfare of other people that you love. This one, it may also be very apparent. You may also really know that you're in this, but on the slightly less severe end of this, I think that this is one of those places where you're more likely to be able to be gaslit, either by yourself or by the person that you're in that relationship with, right? It's a little bit more covert. It's a little bit more subtle. It's a little bit more implicit rather than explicit. And so I do think that in this kind of relationship, you're more likely to doubt yourself. And it's less likely to be as obvious to those around you necessarily. They might know, especially if you have people particularly close to you or with whom you share a lot of the details of what's going on. But it would take a little bit of a higher barrier to entry, I would say, for people to notice that you're in this kind of relationship from the outside. Obviously, there's a lot of other kinds of relationships, like I was saying at the beginning, that can be just not good enough to bother putting the effort into, or, not fulfilling the needs that you originally entered into the relationship to have fulfilled, things like that. But these are kind of the two, in a sense, most severe types of relationships that you might be looking to end. And I will echo something that Michelle said. I think we're all very prone to thinking of the word relationship almost exclusively as having to do with romantic or sexual partners. And this definitely doesn't have to be just that. This can definitely be friends, family, and other types of people as well. So anything to add to any of that, Michelle?
Yeah, just looking over what it says about an interfering relationship, it also seems like an interfering relationship has qualities of a codependent relationship.
Ooh, good point.
Because thinking about some of the things that you mentioned, where it becomes more difficult to pursue your goals, your ability to enjoy life and do things you like doing, your relationships. When you're in a relationship that's codependent, your focus gets really consumed by the other person, how they are doing or how that relationship is doing, and that other things in your life can really go to the back burner to where you start neglecting your own needs or the other relationships that you have in your life and finding it difficult to be there for other people that you care about. So that might be another way to look at that one as well. But yeah, I think you did a really nice job describing both of them, and naming as well, like you said, it just is worth emphasizing that even if you have a relationship in your life where you're thinking about it, you're like, well, I don't think it's interfering or destructive, but it's just not working for me anymore. You know, you said it. You were like, you can end a relationship for reasons other than these, even if it doesn't fall into either of these categories. You know, you have the right to end a relationship at any point in time if it's not working for you.
Yeah, I was going to say that doesn't serve you. Maybe that's a good way of putting it, like any relationship that doesn't serve you.
Yep. Well, and you talked about this. You've talked about this, I think, a couple times now, but this idea of an enthusiastic yes.
Yeah. Yes.
And that idea, I think, really can come into relationships, because if you are not having an enthusiastic yes to spending time with that person, or you're not feeling that you're getting an enthusiastic yes from them.
True.
On the other side, it was just kind of like, yeah, we're just kind of existing in this relationship. We're not really getting much out of it anymore. We're not really enjoying each other's company anymore. Maybe I can just sense that it's creating a lot of stress for me, or it seems like it's creating a lot of stress for them. I mean, that alone can be a reason enough to say this relationship needs to end. But yeah, I really like how you talked about both. That was the main thing that came up for me, was thinking about how an interfering relationship sounds a lot like a codependent relationship.
That makes sense. Yeah, I was just thinking I don't know, also on the other side of, you can totally end relationships for any reason. Also, do keep in mind that, as far as I'm aware, no long enough term, intimate enough relationship of any type, again, romantic, family, friend, whatever, nothing's going to go by without problems, right? So this isn't saying to, like, I don't know, cut and run at the first bumpy road, but
yeah, do the boundary setting stuff from last week.
Yeah. And then see how they respond and how things go from there. So
yeah.
All right, on to you, Michelle.
Yeah. So getting into some of the things that DBT recommends when it comes to ending relationships, there's 6 different things that we're going to talk about. So you can really, as we've said it before, like a DBT buffet, pick and choose which of these apply to the type of relationship you're ending and what you feel like you need to help strengthen your resolve or give you the skills that you need to go through with ending it, because it's really hard to end relationships. I feel like, what did you mention an episode or 2 ago? You mentioned something about how a drinking game or something for the things that we say. For this episode, whenever we say that ending a relationship is hard, drink, because I'm sure we're going to be saying it plenty. So anyways, the first thing that DBT talks about, going back to the foundations of DBT, it was the first skill that we talked about, is wise mind. And they say, decide to end relationships in wise mind, never in emotion mind.
Ding, 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 ding.
What a great place to start. Because our emotion mind tends to take over sometimes when it comes to relationship conflict or disagreement. We have an emotional response when someone hurts our feelings. And we can easily make a reckless decision in that moment, even if it's not to end the relationship, just to say something that's really hurtful that we don't really mean, because we feel so hurt by this other person's actions towards us, and we just react. I have an example of this with a friend of mine where I basically had to be like, I don't know if you did the right thing. She didn't end the relationship entirely, let me just say that, but she had plans to meet up with someone, I think to get a drink or go to coffee or something. This was months and months ago. And basically, they were going to meet up. I can't remember the exact time, but let's say 4:30 as an example. And one of the things that my friend really values is
punctuality.
Being punctual and being on time. Yep. That's something that's really important for her. And this person did not text her in advance to say, I'm going to be late. This person didn't do that. And there was kind of some stuff that was brewing already between her and this friend of hers. And basically, it got to be 4:32. And she decided to leave.
2 minutes?
My friend did. 2 minutes!
2 minutes!
2 minutes! And she basically sent her friend this really angry text of just kind of like, clearly you don't value my time. I'm leaving. And the friend was like, I'm literally like a minute or two away. And my friend was basically like, I don't care. And she was telling me this, and she was like, do you think I did the right thing? And I'm like, well.
I thought for sure you said the hour wrong. I thought you were going to say it was like 5:30, and I was like, yeah, peace out. Like
2 minutes late, and my friend was like, I'm leaving. And basically,
and I thought I was really about time. Woof.
Yeah, she is very much about it.
Yeah.
I always tell her if I'm running late because I know that's important to her. But basically, like, in hearing her tell me this story, why I'm bringing it up now is because that seemed like a pretty emotion-mind decision in that moment. If you dial it back and you look at your wise mind would probably say, let me send her a text and see when she's planning on getting here. And just check in. I'm not going to completely take off or whatever it is. Let me just check, and then maybe if I give it, 10 more minutes and she hasn't responded to me, then I'll decide what to do from there. Or let's just slow it down a little bit. There's a lot of times what wise mind says. And I've seen this with clients that I've worked with. I'm pretty sure I've seen this in public a time or two, where people are just getting into these huge fights, and then out of nowhere, they're just like, I'm done. I'm just done with you, Or I've had clients who do this with their partners or their family members, and then, a day later, they're like, well, I wasn't really done. I was just mad. So it comes back to, like, our feelings are not facts. And while we want to really listen to our feelings, and it's especially important to notice when you are feeling hurt by someone, take notice of that. Take account of that. That's important information. And also, the decision to end a relationship, especially if it's a long-term relationship, someone that you've had in your life for a long time, whether that be a family member, a friend, or a romantic partner, it really is important to think through what does reasonable mind have to say here? Yeah, not just, okay, I've been hurt by them, so I'm done. Okay, that's important information. And also, what would it look like to be done with this person? What does that mean, say, if you share children together? What does that mean if they're a family member and you see each other every holiday? Like, think through just a little bit more what it means to truly be done with that relationship, so that you can make a wise mind decision when it comes to actually ending it, and also how you end it, so that it doesn't come out in a really angry, long text message in all caps, or it doesn't come out with the two of you yelling at each other in the middle of a parking lot, or whatever it is. Try to think through and be intentional about how you end the relationship and why you are ending it, so that you're considering what reasonable mind has to say about it, as well as your emotion mind.
Yeah, we don't want to discount our emotions.
Yes.
And still.
Yes, and they are not the whole picture here. There's a lot of other things to take into account, because I say this to clients sometimes where they maybe have a pattern or a habit of any time that somebody hurts their feelings, they're just done with that person entirely. Yeah. If we truly acted that way, we would not have anyone left. Mm-hmm. Because, Kate, you said this at the beginning. There are going to be times in any relationship that lasts any amount of time where that person's going to do something that pisses us off,
yep,
hurts us, makes us feel sad, whatever it is. And if we just ended it every single time, we would have no one. So it really is about thinking through the entire situation, what your relationship is with this person, to be like, is this something we can work through? Or is this something really worth ending over? My friend could have probably worked through it with her friend that she was meeting up with the whole being late thing. They probably could have talked about that. My friend probably could have said, hearkening back to boundaries, right? Time boundaries are really important to her. Probably could have said, this is something that's really important to me. Next time, can you text me? Whatever it is, use some dear man stuff. And tried to work through that situation rather than just leaving where they were meeting entirely. And then I don't even think she spoke to her for like a week. I mean, my friend was really upset by this. And I'm like, oh man, how do I validate you? And also, how do I tell you that I think you're overreacting a little bit? So just something to think about. Make sure you are in your wise mind. Anything to add, Kate?
Yeah, the only thing I was thinking about is, and I'm sure we covered this back then, though, good Lord, it's been long enough, I have hardly any idea what we said, but it's something we tend to say, right? It's not, wise mind isn't about discounting our emotion mind.
Yes.
It's just necessary, it's just sort of not acting in the heat of that moment, right? Mm-hmm. So it may be that the decision to end the relationship does end up based mostly in emotion mind, right? I think a lot of times when people end up sort of trapped or stuck in bad relationships, it's because they're going too far into like reasonable mind. Well, it just makes sense financially. Well, it just, right, like they kind of discount their emotions too much. So it may just be this person hurts me too consistently. Right? It may really be based in emotion mind, but that doesn't mean, or in emotions.
Yeah, sure.
But you're not in your emotion mind. There you go. That's the distinction I was trying to think about. Is it could be based 90% on emotional stuff in the relationship, but that doesn't mean you're acting from emotion mind in the moment that you make the decision. So that I think is just, don't be like, oh, I better not be basing this on emotions. Your emotions are valid. And
yes,
not but and.
So. Yep. Yeah, and that's a great way to distinguish it of like, yeah, you can really make your decision based off of the emotions that you've been feeling with this other person, and also not have it be that your emotion mind is driving that bus.
Yeah.
That's a great distinction.
The next thing that it talks about here on the worksheet is that if the relationship is important and not destructive. So in other words, if there's reason to hope that it can be improved, something that you can try is problem solving in order to repair a difficult relationship. Michelle and I made sure we looked before we recorded this, so if you want more in-depth look at problem solving, if you haven't already listened to it, or if you just want to go back for a refresher, problem solving is something that we talk about in episode 16. It's part of the emotion regulation module. So if you want more in-depth ideas, you can go back and re-listen to that. But I think what the point of this, I guess, I don't know, bullet point or box or however you want to put it, on this is, I don't know, while it's all about supporting ending relationships, there are sometimes reasons to try, to try to repair before making that decision, right? I think actually this ties in really well with a lot of what you were saying before, Michelle, of not coming in emotion mind, right? Emotion mind, I think, is a place where we tend to throw the towel in rather quickly about things. And this is saying, hey, if it's not destroying you, right, if it doesn't fit into that first category that we talked about of being a destructive relationship, if there's some reason to hope that this thing can be improved, engage in some problem solving. See what you can do to work around and work with that other person to try and make things, feasible. Try and make them work. Try and make them something that where you can stay. With the emphasis of if this relationship is important, right? You have the right to, how do I want to put that? Like, guard your effort level. I know we just talked about this, I don't know, last week, whatever the heck we did the boundaries one, but I feel like was there a boundary around like effort? I don't know, like we not all, I hate to say this, but not all relationships deserve the same amount of effort from us, right? So if this is a relationship that's just fairly casual, not that important, not that long standing, just not that big of a deal in your life, you probably don't need to worry that maybe it could be improved, and maybe you also just don't have the space and time in your life to put that kind of effort into something that's just not that important to you. So I think that's another reason that it really emphasizes that if the relationship is important and not destructive, then it might be worth pouring more of this energy, more of these resources into trying to make some repairs before deciding finally if ending it is going to be the only way to move forward. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Michelle?
Not too much to add on to what you were saying. Just an example, I guess you could say, of that is that, I had a friendship that ended last year, I guess you could say, actually around the time of my wedding, because she was supposed to be a bridesmaid. And she said she ordered her dress, but she lied, and I tried to communicate with her, and she wasn't getting back to me, and there was just a whole lot of stuff that went down. But that piece that you're emphasizing, Kate, about like, is this an important relationship and how much are you willing to put into it? There were a lot of things that felt important about this friendship to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she has 2 sons and I was their godmother. We'd been friends for, I think, 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was a lot here that even after everything went down and she wasn't a bridesmaid at the wedding anymore, which was a really hard decision to make, and all of this stuff, that I still reached out and I still tried with her. And it was only after multiple times of her not responding to me that I finally made the decision to give up and to not put forth the effort anymore. So it really is going to be unique and individual, and trusting your gut of knowing how much effort to put in, how much problem solving to try. And something that may be a really good indicator is knowing within yourself when you're starting to reach the end of your rope, when it's taking a toll on you, you know, you're just wondering about it, it's taking up a lot of mental space, and really when you're not seeing any effort back from that other person. You know, I think I tried texting her 3 times after the wedding. I texted her happy birthday on her birthday, her son's birthday. I asked her if she wanted to go to lunch. I tried multiple times, and after about 3 times of just no answer, you know, that's when I kind of decided I was going to be done. And I still feel good that I tried.
Yeah,
because
that was it, in line with your integrity.
Yeah, it wouldn't have felt good to just be like, hey, things went really rough here. That would have been an emotion mind decision for me, was to just be like, oh, because we had this miscommunication around stuff with the wedding, I'm just done. You know, I didn't want it to be that way. I wanted us to try to see if we could move past it. And see if there was something that we could salvage. But for me, it was making the decision to call it quits when I saw no effort from her in return. And that may be it for a lot of people, is when you're trying this problem solving and you're trying to reach out and you're trying to fix whatever things have happened between you and this other person, and you're just not getting it back, that may be a sign that the relationship is over. That it's time to end it. But yeah, it feels, I don't want to say good to try when it's an important relationship, but as you put it really nicely, yeah, it was in line with my integrity and how you emphasized, you know, if this is someone really important to you, don't throw in the towel right away if you think there's some hope. I feel good that I didn't throw in the towel when things started declining with she and I. So that's just one example of how it can be important to try to the degree that you think you're able to, and also to accept it when they're not problem solving with you.
Yep.
Okay, so moving on to the next one. It says, cope ahead to troubleshoot and practice ending the relationship ahead of time. Oh, cope ahead. How I love you as a skill. So just as Kate mentioned, problem solving was episode 16. We talk about cope ahead in episode 13, the ABC episode. So yes, if you need a refresher, you can go back and listen to it. So I'm not going to recap what the entire skill is, but I think this skill is really important because I've done this many times. Kate, maybe you have also, especially when it comes to ending romantic relationships.
Oh, yeah. Boy,
do I feel like I need a rehearsal. I feel like I need some prep work, because otherwise in the moment I've had this, not with necessarily, I would say, ending relationships, but just in trying to bring up a concern with someone in my life to try some boundary setting stuff. Hey, this has been, to use my Dear Man skills. We talk about this a lot with Dear Man. Practice. Practicing is so important, because if you go in that moment and the other person says something that totally throws you off your game, or you just forget entirely what you were about to say because you're nervous, then, the whole thing just kind of ends and dies right then and there. Everything you were going to say and do, and it just is gone. And that doesn't feel good. So practicing cope ahead is a way to help you mentally prepare and visualize how you imagine this interaction going, how you are going to keep your footing when you are telling this person that you don't plan to have them in your life anymore. whatever that looks like, whatever kind of boundary you are setting. And this doesn't have to be an all or none, right? Maybe you decide that you will only see this person, at group gatherings or something like that, but you're not going to have the close relationship with them anymore that you once had. Whatever it is, this can be an entire ending or an ending of one piece of your relationship to cut things back, but it's really important to prepare. Yes, go ahead, Kate. You have something to say.
I'm just thinking about that with many of my exes.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when I ended my romantic relationship with an ex-partner of mine that was living with me at the time. And after the, breaking up conversation, I was looking at him, I was like, do you want to move out? And he was like, no. Do you want me to? I was like, no, not at all.
Yeah.
And so, we dated for 2 years, but we lived together for 8. One of my dearest and closest and most amazing friends right now is my ex-partner, Charlie, who we dated for 7 years, but lived together for 12 and are still dear friends, right? So I ended a relationship, but in a sense, what I ended was the dating relationship, right? We ended the romantic aspect. We sort of carved that part out, put it behind us, and then we're left with the parts that worked. And so technically, by the way most people think of it, I ended the relationship, right? We broke up. But I still liked these people. I still loved these people. I still wanted them in my life. Anyway, that's when you were talking about, you just end one aspect of a relationship. I was like, ooh.
I have an example. Yeah, that's a perfect example of this. And in having that conversation and in doing the coping ahead piece, it can be really important to prepare for being clear on what you are ending.
Yeah.
If it's not ending the relationship entirely, because yes, there are situations where that happens and where we can do that, but there's lots of situations where that's not realistic. If you share children together, your relationship, it's not that you're never going to see that person again.
Yeah.
If it's a family member, that also gets tricky.
I knew that was the word you were going to use. I almost jinxed it with you.
Yeah, it gets really hard. Take a drink if you're drinking. It gets really hard to end that type of relationship for good, where it's like, I'm never seeing or talking with this person ever, ever, ever again. That's not always realistic.
Yeah.
So it really is giving yourself this opportunity to think through what you want to say. This is also a great practice to get into your wise mind from the first thing I was talking about, to cope ahead with how you think that other person may respond, so that you know how you want to respond if you get this challenging reaction from them where they're, maybe trying to fight you on it or convince you otherwise or whatever it might be, to really just prepare for how you're going to stand your ground and how you're going to walk through the ending of this relationship, because it really does, in a lot of cases, take some preparation. I used to feel so much shame about the fact that I did mental preparation for any time that I was going to set a boundary with someone or, break up with someone or whatever it was. I would just feel so ashamed that I had to practice it. But then fast forward a number of years and becoming a therapist and learning DBT and all of that, it's like, no, it's one of the healthiest things you can do. It's still important to be present and flexible and mindful in the moment of what's occurring in the here and the now. And it also really gives you a leg up to cope ahead and to mentally prepare for how you want that conversation to go, because it's a tough one to have. Yeah.
I have a thought.
All right, share it.
Well, the annoying part is,
all I want to say.
It's entirely plausible that I or we said this in that episode. So if I'm just repeating myself, yes. I don't know. But I was thinking, as you were talking about, mentally preparing, running through different scenarios, right? Thinking about how that person might respond, different ways, etc. I know, right? There's proof that all of that is very helpful, right? This is great. This is a good skill, etc. The distinction that I think it's important maybe to clarify is the difference between coping ahead and what I would call scripting.
Yeah.
Right? The coping ahead, you tell me if you disagree with this, Michelle, but my thought on the biggest difference is like the cope ahead is focusing on you, how you're going to respond, like imagining yourself coping well, right? So you've sort of rehearsed your best self going into it, right? It's self-reflective and meant to prepare you and keep you on your track. And I think of scripting as being focused more on your expectations of the other person, right? And so this can be a real recipe for getting hurt, getting disappointed, getting let down. When we spend too much time imagining how realistically how we want someone to respond rather than how we think they're going to respond, or how we expect them to respond rather than how we think they're going to respond. And that can just be disastrous. So I think those are two things that if you're not careful can look really similar in your experience or in your own mind. And I do think that it's important to clarify, to put a little separation between those two things. One focuses on yourself and the other focuses on the other person. One prepares you and the other one sets you up for disappointment and letdown. So.
Yep. Well, and I think scripting is also really about this perceived sense of control over
interesting.
the situation.
Okay.
Where we don't have control over what that other person is going to say or what they're going to do. And cope ahead, I think it reminds us of that a little bit, because we're imagining how the scenario may actually play out, how it actually goes, warts and all, with cope ahead. We're imagining, I don't want to say the worst case scenario, but we are mentally preparing for, okay, what happens if they might say that or do this or that kind of a thing. But yeah, when we're scripting and when we've come up with the script, an exact line that we want to say, and this is how we want it to go, sometimes it does come with that expectation that you were talking about of, okay, I'm going to say X, Y, and Z, and then, then things are going to go well. And then if that other person responds and we haven't thought to cope ahead with how the entire situation might play out, we feel very off our game of like, that's not how you were supposed to respond. That's not what you were supposed to say, because I have this perfect script crafted.
I was all ready.
To respond well to it. Yeah. Cope ahead is much more big picture, I think, than scripting is. So that's a good distinction. I'm glad you mentioned all that.
Yeah. All right. Onward. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Let's see. So, I like this. Just be direct. There's more to it, but I do think that's important, right? Be direct. I don't know. The more, all right, I'm calling myself out. Maybe this isn't true for other people, but the more anxious I am about something that I have to say with someone, whether that be ending a relationship or setting a boundary or asking them, like whatever, if I'm just anxious about a communication or an interpersonal interaction, I have a tendency to slide into being a little bit more roundabout, more circuitous in my communication style, because I'm nervous about getting to the point, right? And so I might, which is hilarious, because I think on the whole I'm a very direct human being. But even so, every now and then, if I'm anxious or worried or upset or sad, I might slip into being less and less and less direct. So I think this one is really a reminder to, don't leave wiggle room. Don't leave space for misunderstanding, right? Be direct about whatever it is that you're doing in that communication. It specifically calls out the main interpersonal effectiveness skills. So dear man, give, and fast, which are very recent episodes. I don't remember, not literally the last couple, but within the last 5 or 10. Yeah,
at least something like that.
So way too long to go into them here, but they all describe different ways of interacting with someone, whether you're trying to repair a relationship, whether you're trying to set boundaries, whether you're trying to ask for something, but all in ways that are to the point, right? And or tell you how you want to comport yourself in the communication. I think of give as being more about how you want to handle yourself than much of anything else. But yeah, so don't beat around the bush. I don't know. I personally have not had this happen, but I have heard from multiple people that they broke up with somebody and then the next day the person just doesn't know. Like they thought they broke up with that person, but they were too circumspect. Like they were too vague about it. Once the person was like, oh, I just thought that was hypothetical, or I thought we were just having a fight, or I thought we were just like, and so then they have to break up with the person again. Like, you do not want, if it was hard to go through the first time, you don't want to have to put yourself through that multiple times. Also, I don't know, so many different types of relationship here that we can't nail this down for all the different possibilities, but if this is someone you really care about, you don't want to put them through that more than once either, right? So I think being direct both makes sure that, I don't know, everybody leaves the interaction on the same page, which is healthy and helpful for you, and assuming you still give a shit about the other person, which may or may not be true, depending, helps them as well, right? It's we're both clear, we're both communicating, we're both on the same page, so we don't have to hash this out again. So yeah, I don't know. I feel oddly, Michelle, like you're talking a lot more than I am today, and I can't figure out if I'm just being unimaginative or you're just a chatterbox. I don't know. But,
I don't think you're being unimaginative at all. I think it's me being a chatterbox.
Because I'm like, and I'm done. I don't know what else to say there. Be direct,
you're at a
disadvantage. There you go.
You're at a disadvantage with that one because basically it's just saying use Dear Man, Give, and Fast, and we've already reviewed those skills.
Yes.
So there's not much more to say. I don't think I have much more to say either about it.
Okay, good. I won't feel like I missed much if you don't have much to add.
Yeah, the only thing that I think I'll emphasize when you're ending a relationship, it probably, if you really look at it, has something to do with the sticking to your values piece of Fast.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably something there about a value or something that's important to you being violated for why you're ending this relationship. You know, even though with the friend example I gave earlier, seems pretty clear she was in her emotion mind at the time, but her value was violated of people being on time. That was why she had the reaction that she did. And if you review and think back on relationships in your life that you've chosen to end, and you think about why you've ended those, probably it's because there was a point in time where you weren't feeling in line with your values within this relationship. So that would be one piece that I might really emphasize out of using Dear Man, Give, and Fast, is that you may be choosing to end this relationship because of something having to do with your values, and to look at what that could be.
That makes sense. I like it.
Yep. So moving on to the next one, it says, practice opposite action for love when you find you love the wrong person.
Hard.
So,
you got a hard one.
Yeah, I did. And I didn't write down the episode for opposite action.
Do you want me to go find it while you talk?
Yes, you can go find it while I talk.
Okay.
I'm really going to be talking about some specific stuff that we didn't touch on in that episode, because with opposite action and with the DBT materials that Kate and I have, with every emotion, there's a separate handout for how to act opposite of that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And Kate and I did not go into each individual emotion within the opposite action episode because we would have been there for ages. So I'm going to specifically talk about what DBT recommends as opposite action for love. And it says, which is really important, when you find you love the wrong person, which is an interesting way to phrase it, right? How do you know this is the wrong person? But I think really what they're getting at there is what was discussed at the beginning of, if you recognize that this is a destructive relationship, or you recognize that this is an interfering relationship where maybe you've tried some boundary setting and the person has not been respectful of your boundaries, and now it's time to end the relationship entirely. How can you do that? Especially when you still have feelings for this person. So I think it's thinking about it in the romantic sense, but I can see how this applies to other types of relationships as well, you know, where you still have love for that friend or love for that family member, and yet you can recognize that them being in your life is not healthy, even if you still care about them. I mean, that friend that I was referencing for myself, oh my gosh, I still care about her. You know, it's sad that that relationship had to end. It was sad. And it was also what I needed to do for myself. I couldn't keep putting forth more effort than I already was. But do I still care about her? Yes. So when you find yourself still having that emotional bond, yet you also recognize that it's in your best interest to end the relationship, this is what DBT recommends that you do.
Episode 17.
Episode 17. Okay, perfect. Episode 17, guys. Go listen to it again if you need a refresher on opposite action. So, one of the things that it talks about in this DBT worksheet as well is that there are opposite actions and then there are all the way opposite actions. So, leveling up. So, I'll talk about each one as some suggestions. So, the opposite actions are avoiding, it says, the person, animal, or object you love. Distracting yourself from thoughts of the person, animal, or object. Reminding yourself of why the love is not justified when loving thoughts do arise. So a lot of times, I think especially when people are in an abusive relationship of some kind, people in their life will try to do this a lot, where they'll be like, look at all of these bad things about this person. Mm-hmm. Look at all of these times that they hurt you, either physically or emotionally or whatever it is. Look at all of these reasons for why they are not good for you. And the person who's in the relationship will go, but I still love them. Yeah. Or they did this good thing the other day. And I was in a relationship like this for a long time. It was not abusive, but many of my family members and friends did not like the person I was with, and they tried this on me all the time. Michelle, look at all these reasons why he's not a good match for you. It fell on deaf ears. So if you are able to do that for yourself without it coming from an external source, to really come up with your own reasons for why this person is not good for you, that may help. But it also does not always cut it, especially when it's coming from outside sources, unfortunately. It also says to distract yourself, but it doesn't go super in depth about what that means or what that looks like. But I imagine probably using some of the stuff from Accepts that we talked about ages ago, because those are effective ways to distract yourself. But I really like more what it says with the all the way opposite actions of love. It gets a little more detailed. So it says, avoid contact with everything that reminds you of a person you love. Pictures, letters, messages, or emails, belongings, mementos, places you were together, places you plan to or wanted to go together, places where you know the person has been or will be. No following, waiting for, or looking for the person. Sounds like a lot of work. Because it is. It's a lot of work, especially if you were in this relationship for a long time, to completely erase this person from your life. That is incredibly difficult to do and is not going to happen overnight.
No.
And so be patient with yourself in that process. But what it's getting at here is to take those steps. And it's not just about avoiding seeing them in person. It's about avoiding everything that reminds you of the person that you love. Now, this also feels really important to say. This is not necessary or needed for a lot of relationships. You can, if you want to, keep reminders of that person, or like he was talking about, you can stay in touch with that person. That person could still be your roommate if you wanted, whatever it is. But if you recognize that this is a truly unhealthy relationship or an abusive relationship, and maybe you've tried to walk away before and you have not been able to stay away, then you want to do some of this stuff. This is kicking it up to level 10 in terms of what it means to truly end a relationship. And you may need to do this for your own well-being, especially if it was an abusive relationship. When I have clients who have been in abusive relationships, they have trauma responses when they come in contact with something that reminds them of that relationship, or where they do go to a place. They're like, I thought it would be fine to go to that restaurant, and then I had a panic attack and was crying in the bathroom.
Yep.
because that was a place they used to go with their ex. So this isn't going to apply to everyone. There are many people out there who are like, oh yeah, I could still go to that restaurant, especially if the relationship ended a while ago. I could go to that relationship or that restaurant and I would be fine, even though it was a place that I went when I was in that relationship. But not for everyone. For some people, this step of avoiding all contact is really important. The next thing it says is stop expressing love for the person, even to friends. And then I think it's kind of funny how it phrases it here. It says, be unfriendly toward the person. But what they mean is unfriend the person on Facebook, Twitter, etc. So that may mean that you have no more contact with them through social media. Everything is blocked. And it's important, too, that if you are truly trying to get away from this relationship entirely, if this person is coming up for you, that a good way that you might manage that is by talking about it with a therapist or by journaling about it or something like that. If you do go and talk about this person to your friends, especially if those are people who do still have contact with this person for any reason, yeah, that can get really messy. So it's best to keep that person out of conversations and to find other ways to process if they come into your mind or your thoughts. And then it says, which is interesting because, right, we're talking about avoiding contact, but if you have to be around them, which like we talked about, there are situations where that occurs, where you do still have to be around this person. It says, adjust your posture and expressions if you're around the person you love. No leaning toward them, no getting close enough to touch, no sighing or gazing at the other person. So, really changing how you are with them if you guys are in each other's presence for some reason or other. Make sure that you are being businesslike is the term that came up for me.
I like it.
But
cordial,
you're seeing them,
but like in that cold way, like that Victorian politeness kind of way.
A little bit, yeah. Like it's okay to be a little bit aloof. It's okay, especially at the beginning when maybe everything in you is like, I just want to hug them, or I just want to kiss them, or whatever it is. This is a bottom-up process to make sure that you are changing your body's response, and that may help create some mental, emotional distance between you and them. You're right, Kate. I am being a chatterbox today. Any other thoughts on the opposite action stuff for love?
No, I don't know. This isn't really like, I don't know, much in the way of an add-on. But I would just say that I think, again, even the way that DBT phrases most of that stuff still sounds very romantically centric.
Right.
And I don't know. I think even the box on here where it says you love the wrong person also to me sounds very romantically centric. And as someone who has had, and certainly has had enough clients who have had, some of their most problematic and painful and worst relationships be with family members, like that's definitely a place where this sense of love can also get in the way, right? Like, how can I not love her? She's my mother, right? Or of course I love her. She's my sister, or whatever. He's my whatever, right? It doesn't matter, right? But that, I think that you might have to tweak some of it a little bit, depending on what the relationship is. But I just want to really normalize that sometimes people have to cut off relationships with family, and that there's a lot of social stigma around that in our culture. There's a lot of like, well, he or she is your fill in the blank here, so you just need to find a way to be in relationship with them. Like it's an obligation or whatever. And I just want to say that, first of all, you're never wrong for loving a person, even if that person's bad for you. That doesn't mean you're dumb, stupid, irresponsible, untrustworthy. I don't know. Fill in the blank here with however you may insult yourself or others may have insulted you around loving someone who's clearly so bad for you, right? Like that sort of idea. And, including your family. It's not wrong to love them, and it's not wrong to leave them.
Yep.
So,
Dialectics.
Yep.
You can love them and still choose to not have a relationship with them.
Yep. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Last but certainly not least. Okay. So, this one is practice safety first. A lot of what Michelle and I have been talking about has really been, I don't know, all over the scale of how serious a problem the relationship might be for you. And sort of harkening way back to the beginning of, we understand that there are lots of reasons why people might stay in incredibly abusive or incredibly dangerous or incredibly painful situations. What this one is reminding you is to watch out for your safety, right? Especially in a highly abusive or life-threatening relationship. So I know Michelle is planning on posting parts of this on our Facebook group as well, but just to mention a few resources for if you happen to be in a really abusive or really life-threatening relationship and you want to talk to someone about leaving, or you want to make plans for leaving. There are a lot of places have local domestic violence hotlines, but there's also a toll-free national domestic violence hotline. Like I said, we'll post this, but for those of you who aren't in the group, the number is 1-800-799-7233. They can help you with safety planning. They can help refer you to like domestic violence counselors and local agencies and places that can assist you with the process of planning and actually getting out of the situation. There's also the International Directory of Domestic Violence Agencies. That webpage is www.hotpeachpages.net. And while this is a very serious topic, I just have to say, my God, does that sound pornographic to me. Anyway, I'm sorry, doesn't it though? Is that part of it? It's supposed to be like covert, so if people see your search history, it doesn't look like what you're looking for? I have to assume that's part of why.
I do think that's part of it, and I went on to verify that that was still a current website before we recorded this episode, and it is. And it's, how they do it is basically, it's international.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we have many international listeners, so whatever country you're in, you pick the country that you're in. If you are in the United States, you pick the state you're in, and it breaks it down by county.
Damn, nice.
So this really does help you find your local domestic violence agency, and that's where you want to go if you need to find a new housing situation and things like that. So it actually does have a ton of local resources out there. You just have to start with where you're living, and then it narrows it down more and more for you.
Awesome.
So really great resource.
I do not mean to make light of something that is very necessary and very serious. And also, as soon as I read that, I was like, hot peach pages?
Yeah, I was like
really?
Legit DBT? And then I checked out it, and yes, it is. It is legit.
That looks like the kind of webpage that I would be embarrassed if my boss found in my search history, right? Anyway,
what hot peaches were you looking at?
Right? Well, that's wow, inappropriate. Anyway, so, but the long and the short of it is, take care of yourself. There, again, while acknowledging that there's lots of reasons that people stay, I also want to acknowledge that there are a lot of resources for when you feel ready and able to get out. Right? Your safety is important. Your well-being is important. The well-being and safety, if you have them, of your children is important. Right? It's, staying together for the kids is rarely the right decision, especially in those sorts of situations, right? They're going to be better and healthier if you're able to get out. I don't know. I want to so hard ride the line of making sure that I am being supportive and not diminishing not invalidating or shaming anyone for the fact that they're staying in a hard place, because that can lead to staying longer, right? This sense of shame and I haven't left now, and if I leave now, everybody will know that I was stupid to have stayed, right? This idea that if it comes out that this person's been abusing me, people are gonna be like, why did you stay with them for so long? And so, it's too embarrassing to leave now after having defended them for so long, or I'm not gonna have any support because everybody loves my partner and they won't believe me, or right? Like, there's so many ways that we can shame ourselves, that we can invalidate ourselves, that participate in what is keeping us stuck in something that's really very destructive for us. So I just want to say support is there. And while we both want to obviously and entirely recognize how difficult and how frightening and how monumental a choice like this can feel, especially if you've been with someone who has degraded your sense of self-worth, your sense of self-esteem, your sense of your ability, your competence, or your ability to take care of yourself, right? All of this makes it so much harder. So if you can, maybe make it a little bit less hard on yourself. And also, please look for resources so you can know that you're not alone. Even if everybody in your personal life isn't there. Like, you don't have people, or they are supporting your partner rather than you, or whatever, or your family member. Again, here I am defaulting into romantic as well, but there are certainly abusive familial relationships, right? Even if everybody else is legitimately on that other person's side, that doesn't mean you're alone. So, I don't know. Do you have anything else to add to that, Michelle?
The only thing that I would add is that with everything that's gone on this year with COVID
and
stay-at-home orders and things like that, is that unfortunately domestic violence
has gone up,
has been on the rise. Because there are a lot of families out there just facing so many more stressors. You know, maybe it was before that you were able to leave the house every day to go to your job, and that was your time away from your partner, your family member, whoever it was, who has been abusive towards you. And then next thing you know, you're not working outside the home, they're not working outside the home, and then you're together 24/7. And there's been a lot of financial strain for people. So when people are under a lot of stress, and we all have been to some degree or another, if that person who you live with has a temper, you could say, or just does not handle their stress very well, it's been happening where more and more, maybe sometimes for the first time, that stress has now been turned and started to get taken out on you.
I was going to say, it may have tipped borderline abusive relationships into full-bore abusive relationships.
Exactly. Made maybe an already really bad situation now so much worse because of, you know, just the circumstances at hand. So you are absolutely not alone in maybe needing support or care or concern, or if you were already contemplating trying to leave this relationship or this person before, and then COVID hit, and you're like, now what do I do? Like, there's no way I can. Absolutely call the domestic violence hotline that Kate said, because they are trained in how to problem solve with you and help you get creative in what your options are to still try to leave in a safe way. You know, maybe before you were going to leave when they left to go to work or something like that, and now they're home all the time. Well, you know, maybe it's something where you talk about how you're going to go to the grocery store or something, and that's when you leave. But they can give really clear guidance and tailored advice for your circumstances and your situation for how to help you create a plan. So, you know, I think that's also been a common experience, is that people are like, well, I absolutely can't leave because of COVID and all that that's brought. And there are resources out there to help you with that.
Perfect. Thanks. Good acknowledgement, Michelle.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome. What's our homework?
Whew, it's big homework this week, right? This topic is ending relationships. And so basically, this may apply to you, this may not apply to you, but the homework is to see if there are any relationships in your life that need to end. Maybe there are, maybe there aren't. Maybe for the most part, your relationships are in a pretty healthy place for the time being. That's great. And it could also be that you've had one or two people in your life that you've been toying around with, maybe this relationship needs to end. Or at the very least, I maybe need to take a step back. And change what this relationship looks like. And so to reflect on that a little bit for yourself is the homework. And if you realize that there is a relationship in your life that needs to end or needs some serious adjusting or scaling back, to try out one of the things that Kate and I talked about. And we'll be posting that handout in the group. So if you're like, crap, I can't remember all 6, that's okay. We'll post it in the Facebook group so you can look back at it and pick one to try and help you get where you want to be.
All right. So, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So I get awkward self-promotion time today. Yay. All right. So first, please, we would love your support on our Patreon if you feel up to it and able and interested. That will be www.patreon.com/dbtandme. Speaking of which, big shout out and a thank you to, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Kaylee.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Woohoo! We appreciate you. Thank you. Also, please feel free to check out our Etsy shop. We have some pretty, I think, fucking fun stuff on there. Just go to Etsy and search for DBT and me. Please give us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts if that's how you listen to us. And last but never least, please continue to send us emails. We love to receive them, and we love to do the Q&A episodes, so keep them coming. That is, oh my gosh, where'd my brain just go? dbtandmepodcast@gmail.com, where you just want to type it in. Michelle's like, I will rescue you.
Yeah, I'm typing it now. You know when you do something so many times?
I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10 months. I'll get it memorized eventually.
Well, your brain just stops at a certain point thinking that it's important. Your brain's like, we've got this, until the moment comes and it's like, crap, do I got this?
Right? And
I don't know.
You send in the search inquiry and something in your brain's like, hang on, I'm rifling through the files now. I'll get it to you in a second.
I'm just impressed you remembered the email at all, because there have certainly been times where I've forgotten to mention.
Oh man, it's true. So. All right, so cool. Onward to closing moments, I think.
Yes.
Moment. Only one of them today. Okie dokie. As usual, just begin by getting into whatever is a comfortable position for you right now. I can be sitting, standing, laying down, walking, whatever feels good and comfortable in your body. If you're safe and comfortable doing so, I invite you to go ahead and close your eyes. And as always, just begin by tuning into your breath. You don't have to breathe any more deeply or any more slowly than you are naturally. It's just about paying attention. Just about noticing the different sensations of your breath, noticing the rhythm, and allowing all of that to bring you into the moment and into your body. And now I'd like you to begin by picturing yourself standing on a riverbank. This is a fairly fast-flowing river in front of you, and down a little ways in the distance you can see that this river is going to run out and into the ocean. So take a moment and just build this image in your mind. See the river, hear the river, try and smell the taste of the ocean on the tip of your tongue, on the breeze. Notice whatever kind of grasses or trees or other flora or fauna might be around the river with you. And just try and make it as realistic as you can in this moment and in your mind's eye. Once you have that pretty solid in your imagination, I want you to go ahead and bring up one of two things in your mind. Bring up either a relationship that you think maybe you are going to need to end here soon, or bring to mind a relationship that you have ended in your past, if you don't have any you feel like need to be ending now. Whichever thing you're imagining, in your mind's eye, I want you to see yourself holding your hands out in front of you, and I want you to imagine some object that for you is representational of this relationship being held in your hands. This could be anything from a photograph to an article of clothing to, I don't know, a gift or an ornament. It doesn't matter. There's no limitations. It's in your imagination. It can be anything whatsoever that just for you really represents that person and that relationship. So go ahead and take a moment while you're standing on that riverbank and really dive into feeling whatever that object is sitting in your hands. And while you're imagining it, really bringing into your body whatever sensations come up for you when you think about that relationship. Whatever emotions. Just really take this time to embody that relationship, those emotions, that person, and however you feel about it as you're creating this object in your hands. When you have that and you feel ready, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to take that object to the river. Put it in and let it go. For our current imagination, we're going to go ahead and believe that whatever it was, it's going to float, no matter what it was or what it was made out of. And so as you release it into this river, it's going to be carried down with the current. You're going to be able to watch it as it flows away from you. And while maybe you can't see it on the entirety of its trip, you know that it will flow along this river and all the way out to the ocean and to be carried away by the tide. And notice what that feels like to let go, to put that object in the river and see it carried away from you. There are no right or wrong answers to how this might feel. You can feel everything from relief to grief to anger to fear to joy, anxiety. Nothing is wrong. Nothing is inappropriate. Just make sure that you're paying attention to yourself and that you're making room for whatever thoughts and feelings arise as you metaphorically prepare to let go, to let this relationship flow away from you, to let it be gone and out of your life. So just take a moment, gazing down the river after it, and noticing what your feelings are, what your thoughts are, without clinging to any and without pushing anything away. Just allowing whatever is to be. And now we're going to gently put away this imagination. Allow the scene to dissolve in your mind's eye. And I'd recommend taking a few deep cleansing breaths here. So you're not only letting go of the image in your imagination, but you're also trying to let go of the feelings, the emotions, and the thoughts that arose for you as you watched that object drift away down the river. When you've taken your deep breaths, as usual, take a moment maybe to stretch, to roll your neck or shoulders, your wrists or ankles. Just do whatever feels right and good to your body so that you can bring yourself back into the present moment and into the room. And whenever you feel ready, go ahead and open your eyes. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week,